Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm pretty sure we're operating on all the channels now, and we're a little bit late, but it's worth the wait because we have a special guest lined up tonight, Roslyn Dechert, who will help us deepen the conversation on the transgender issue, as weaving its way all through the discussions about the Tumbler Ridge tragedy, the mass shooting out there, where today we've seen the Prime Minister and other federal leaders in the community mourning alongside local residents and the rest of the country. We also have, for the first time, an official photograph released by RCMP of the shooter and a statement from the shooter's father tonight. Stay with us. We have a lot to unpack.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are Maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow, maybe too late.
Check.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I am back, but I'm not sure if my audio is, because it off every time we reset the broadcast. It doesn't seem to work properly. I think that's right. Yes, we have it, even though it says it's not the right microphone. But we'll go with it because I'm sure that it's working. Let's bring in our guest for tonight, right off the top. Roslyn.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Roslyn. It's a privilege to have you here this evening.
Thank you.
Before we get into our interview with you, I should just bring people kind of up to date on what has happened out in Tumbler Ridge today. And that includes a visit from the Prime Minister and other federal leaders. We have video of that. If I can find the right tab, here it is. And so, of course, we also have, as I mentioned, a photograph that has been previously released, but now released by police, so we can confirm that it is a correct image of the shooter. Jesse Van Rootselaar, or Jesse Strang, is actually the name that this person was using. This is Mark Carney and other leaders, including Pierre Poilievre, I believe, there in Tumbler Ridge today.
So Roslyn, I just want to begin by asking you what was your first reaction when you got the news that this had happened?
Well, it's an absolute horrible tragedy, and I'm heartbroken for the victims, particularly because most of them are so young and they have an entire life ahead of them that was absolutely destroyed. It's absolutely unnecessary. It's an absolute heartbreak.
Yes. So the reason I called you today was because one of our viewers suggested I do that.
Mhm.
Uh, and it was suggested to me that you might be able to help us understand the transgender issue that, as I mentioned in the intro, is weaving its way through all of these conversations that we're having about Tumbler Ridge. It certainly is front and center on social media, and I guess the reason your name came up was because you, I guess, must be involved in some sort of advocacy or activism or efforts to raise awareness, or what? How are you involved?
Well, that's a great question. I've been involved in several ways. I'm currently the member of a transgender group. I have facilitated my own group in Kingston, Ontario. I was a co-facilitator for many years in the Trenton Belleville area of Ontario. I live in Trenton. I've also worked in prisons with transgender prisoners. And I currently mentor different transgender people, particularly transgender women like myself.
Okay, and when you're involved in this kind of, is advocacy the right word? Activism? Is it what? How do I describe what you do?
Good question. I think I do both. I have been in different, what would you say, like different activities where there's a group of us protesting as well as mentoring people one on one. So I think I'm an advocate and also an activist.
Okay, so the conversations that we've had here over the last few nights have involved the transgender issue, and that is largely because particularly a lot of conservative live streamers have made that the focal point, the focal issue in all
Yes.
of this. And they're saying, oh well, it's another transgender shooting.
Mhm.
Are you surprised? How do you respond to that?
Well, that's a really great question. And it's interesting to note that that well, people will take the actions of one individual, and those actions were horrible, and put that against the whole transgender community. It's odd. I use an analogy. Let me ask you a question. Are you a religious person, or do you identify as a Christian or a Catholic?
um like, I don't go to church,
Okay.
you
Well,
know but
that's all right.
but do I believe in God?
Yes.
Yeah, I've come to believe that there is a God. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's great. So let me put it this way then. Um, do all Christians shoot law enforcement in the back? I mean, is that what
Mhm.
Christians do?
I would say no, because
I would agree with you. Yes, they
personally,
they
I
don't
think
do
people
that.
need to be judged as individuals, but
I,
that's
I I
me.
agree completely. So we had the Waco, Texas, issue that happened about 30 years ago, and they identified as Christians. And I understand they shot two, not one, but two FBI agents in the back.
Mhm.
Do all Christians do that? No. That was two people that were doing what they weren't supposed to be doing. They're obviously very destructive people, and it's unfortunate they shot two law enforcement issues in the back. Just because those two Christians did that doesn't mean the millions or perhaps hundreds of millions of Christians in North America do that way. So, if I was to say all Christians will shoot law enforcement in the back, it's the same as saying all transgender people are killers. It doesn't make sense. So that's my response to as you say, the conservative backlash against my transgender community again, here.
Yeah, I do see people, and I'm hearing people, and social media,
Yes.
live streamers saying that it's evidence of mental illness, that
Mhm.
there's a big problem. Um, and a pattern is what they're saying.
Right.
Again, I mean, I'm struggling with all of that. Can you help
Uh-huh.
me here?
Yes. I've experienced this myself on multiple occasions, including some of my own family members. People, for whatever the reasons are that I don't entirely understand, hate transgender people like myself. So anything that can give them some, ammunition to hate us, they will simply use against us, whether it's justifiable or not justifiable. And that's what's happening here. Whether this transgender person who committed this horrible crime, uh, did this, or this horrible person didn't do this. These very same people are still going to disparage transgender people like myself.
Let's start here. Can you help us understand the definitions of some of these words? I
Okay.
think a lot of this gets muddied, right? Even as last night I was trying to illustrate a point about intersex people or hermaphrodites, people born with both male and female genitalia, and then
Mhm.
also, I was uh, making broader statements about what percentages of the population in certain demographics would maybe be considered gay or uh, LGBTQS plus or transgender or cisgender um, or intersex. Can you help us understand, or can you help me with the definitions of what these words are, and specifically transgender, because that is the word that is being used to describe the shooter out in
Mhm.
Tumbler Ridge?
Okay, well, you asked me a few things. Let me try to answer it congruently as possible. So, when you talk about gay people or lesbian people, that's an issue of sexual orientation. When you're talking about the transgender community, it's not an issue of sexual orientation. It's a gender issue. It's separate. So one can be a heterosexual transgender girl. So that's a bit of a difference. Where a gender being transgender is a gender identity issue. So let me separate the two to start with. Um, was that any help?
Um, I think so, to a degree. I haven't looked in the chat. I'm afraid to, because I think that some people, I'm certain some people just won't want to be watching this broadcast tonight.
That's
But
okay.
we offer everyone a voice here from
Mhm.
all sides of issues,
That's fine.
and this is something that I think is important to listen to as part of the whole discussion.
Yes.
Um, so some people are going to say that what you're saying is that as a transgender person,
Mhm.
you're making a choice that isn't really a choice because you were born a biological male or female, that there are only two sexes, and
Mhm.
therefore there's some sort of a larger mental health issue.
Okay. It's interesting. A lot of people come from a religious, religious point in saying that.
Mhm.
Though the Bibles, because there's the Anglican Bible, the Catholic Bible, the Greek Orthodox Bible. As far as I know, none of the Bibles really make that distinction. What I can say, I'm a Sunni Muslim, and the group of Muslims I know are primarily Pakistani based. And a fatwa was actually passed in 2016 by the Islamic Brotherhood of Lahore, Pakistan, that does determine that there is a transgender type of gender. And in that fatwa, we were considered fine. We were considered female. We're able to marry. We should act as women Islamically. And there really doesn't seem to be a problem with our gender in that particular group of people, though that is not indicative of all Islamic people.
Mhm.
So, I can make a religious argument for us.
Okay, yeah, I'm not Muslim, and
Okay.
I'm probably not the person to have the broader discussion on the religious side.
Okay.
You might want somebody better versed in all of that to explore that. And to be fair to the audience, I'm pretty sure I'm not the person to lead that full discussion.
Okay.
Let me ask you, what do you make of the young person who was the shooter, this Jesse Strang or Jesse Van Rosselaar? Um, I'm looking for a broad assessment from you as someone who
Yes.
is transgender, talking about a young person that they say was transitioning. Uh, I I don't have much personal experience with. I have some, I guess, with
Hmm.
people I've known, but it's not my world. I don't. I'm not transgender. I don't fully understand what that experience is like. So
Yes.
again, you just what as you're looking at it from your perspective, your worldview,
Yes.
what are you seeing that people on this side of the world don't see?
Well, what I see as a person, they did identify, as far as I know, as a transgender female. They had transitioned, I believe it was 4 to 6 years ago. Um, and they were, based on how their appearance and how they look, had apparently certainly come out as a trans person. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know as well, Rick, because I don't know them personally, and I've just done preliminary reading as you have. So they were a transgender person. That's okay. It was a young transgender person. Apparently, she was 18 when she killed all these people. Um, but she decided to do an act of, frankly, a very destructive, evil act. I'll make a judgment call. What she did was horrible. Horrible, horrible thing that this person did, and I do not support them in any way, shape, or form. But yes, they happen to be transgender. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to bring up the photos of the victims, and then
Mhm.
I have text of a statement from Jesse Strang's biological father. And so,
Yes.
of course, these are the young people who were killed:
Hmm.
Abel Mwansa, Ezekiel Schofield, Jakaria Lampert. We don't have a photo of Jakaria. And Shanda Evguana Duran. That's the teacher, 39 years old. Zoe
Terrible.
Benoit, Kylie Smith. We heard from her father last night, Emmett Jacobs, and Jennifer Jacobs. The Jacobs, that's, I believe,
I think that's the
the
mother, the
mother
last
and
photograph.
and the sibling.
Yes, horrible.
Yes.
Absolutely horrible.
And then today, the father released this statement saying, "To the families who have lost loved ones and to every person who has been affected by this senseless and unforgivable act of violence, I offer my most heartfelt condolences. There are moments when words feel far too small for the sorrow we are carrying together. What has happened has left an ache in the heart of our town that will not soon fade. In a place where we know each other by name, where we pass one another in the grocery store and gather at the same community events, this loss feels deeply personal to us all." And to the families, here I have to go back, I guess.
Hmm.
And actually, I don't have it there. I thought it was on the screen, but
Right.
I may have the rest over here not to put on the screen. As the biological Yes, as the biological father of the individual responsible, I carry a sorrow that is difficult to put into words. I was estranged from Jesse Strang and was not part of his life. His mother
Hmm.
declined my involvement from the beginning, and I was not given the opportunity to be part of raising him. Jesse did not use the Van Rootselaar family name at any point in his life. While that distance is the reality of our relationship, it does not lessen the heartbreak I feel for the pain that has been caused to innocent people and to the town we call home. and that from Justin van Rootselaar, the biological father of Jesse Strang, is the last name that I guess she did use. And
Yes.
again, I want to be respectful. Other people are saying that there's something wrong if I call Jesse a she. I should be
Okay.
calling Jesse a he. And if I do
Yes.
this, then I'm on the wrong side of that. And then everybody's going to get mad at me. And then they're going to say, I'm not going to watch your show anymore, Rick, because you're using the wrong pronouns. He's a he, not a she. See, you can't win.
Well, it's I can empathize with the outrage. I feel outraged myself. I mean, I could just picture myself. I was a student at one time, it was many years ago, and I can't imagine what it was like for those children who did survive, being in a classroom, hearing the gunshots, and having their classmate die. So I can understand the outrage, and I myself feel absolute outrage. And the way people are sometimes expressing that is against transgender people, and they are outraged as I'm outraged, and they're simply taking it our community at large. I can justify their outrage. I share their outrage. I am annoyed by this. I am angry to hear this. I am angry at that person. That person who shot these innocent children is frankly an evil person. I'll call that out. I'll make a judgment statement. So I can understand the anger. Um, that person identified as a she. So, despite what they did, we would generally call them a she. We would respect their pronouns. By respecting their pronouns, we don't endorse violence. We don't endorse killing anybody. Never mind, 10 children. I think 25 people were injured on top of that. Must be horrific injuries with a gunshot. I can't imagine that. So I understand the outrage out there, and the outrage is justified, and I share it. I'm part of that outrage.
Jordan Peterson rose to social media prominence and fame by refusing to use pronouns, saying it's compelled speech.
Yes.
And so that has become sort of a rallying cry for people on the right. And of course, I don't advocate for compelled speech. You must say this, you must say that. And yet at the same time, I do want to be respectful of people.
Yes.
I have a hard time navigating through this minefield.
Well, I think Jordan Peterson had some of his credentials revoked by some Canadian medical organization. So there's a reason for that. I mean, so many, unfortunately, in the past, it started to change. The media has portrayed transgender people. I mean, we have this one famous lady, I think Orange is Black or something, about a show. She's transgender. Where is she? In a prison. So it's a bad portrayal of trans people. I have transgender friends. They're doing well. I have a 28-year-old woman who's making over six figures. She's self-made. She owns two houses. She's the mother of a beautiful child. I have another friend who's going to get her PhD, who lives in a great area in Toronto. There's a lot, there's I myself, I own my own home. So there's a lot of transgender people that are doing extraordinarily well in life, and a lot of young people doing extraordinarily well. And then, the young people, I think, have a much more difficult time to excel than people of my age group. I'm the start of Generation X, right? I believe we had it easy compared to the younger people today.
So I know I'm getting a message here, and I guess there's some people in the chat who have some maybe questions. So if there are respectful questions, I may put them to you.
I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay. So I guess one of the things they want to know about is what they're referring to as the medical cocktail or the pharmaceutical cocktails that, as they're putting it,
Yes.
people are subjected to when they're transitioning. And,
Right.
They're wondering, I think, if that affects people psychologically, or maybe creates suicidal thoughts, or maybe moves them toward violent acts. What can you tell us about that?
That is a great question. And the studies done by multiple medical associations, including the American Medical Association, has shown that when young transgender people start to get medical care, that's both family support, community support, and in some cases, medical support, such as different drugs like puberty blockers. What those statistics have shown is that those transgender people, as they get older, tend to be more successful. They have less suicidal ideation, less suicide attempt than those that are not affirmed for being transgender. I mean, I experienced this myself. I knew in 1971 I was trans. The world didn't even exist in 1971. So I didn't have these opportunities that the younger people did. I think it would have worked out much better for me if I did.
I hear people say, and they quote statistics and studies saying, if people who transition are far more likely to commit suicide. Is that true, or do you have a counter argument to that?
Yes, when transition means several things. It can mean coming out socially. So what it means is that, yes, generally transgender people, because of the external pressures they have, are more prone to suicidal ideation, suicidal attempt, or possibly suicide than much of the population. And a lot of that is caused by these very conservative, what we call conservative commentators that you're talking about. It's the external flack. We have pressures that other communities don't have because of the prejudice against transgender people and the bigotry. So it is hard on our community. Yes.
Yeah, I think that if you look at anybody that becomes violent, commits a violent act, a murder, there could be a lot of reasons why someone might do that. It could be the way they're born with some developmental disability. It could be that they suffered a lot of psychological abuse over time. It could be that they are taking drugs that make them psychotic. So those are three scenarios that I can just think of that might contribute to someone committing a violent act like this. So I understand that some of the criticisms that come from the conservative streamers and others
Yes.
directed all of this, those causations weave their way through those discussions.
Yes.
So can you just again broaden the conversation, deepen that, and help us gain a better perspective on this from your perspective so that we can understand how you see this?
Yes. Well, I mean, all of us in life, be we transgender individuals or other, we all have hurdles to cross in life, right? Disabled people have unique hurdles to cross in life. Visual minorities have unique hurdles to cross in life. Transgender people like myself have unique hurdles to cross in life. And we all make decisions. We are all very powerful. Be as transgender, Christian, white, black, Oriental. We're all very powerful people if we choose to be. And this particular individual who killed all these people a few days ago simply made a bad choice. And we all have choices to make in life.
See, there was I'd say it was, somebody on the other side of the political aisle who made a video that we ran 2 nights ago saying that the first victim in Tumbler Ridge was actually the shooter because probably was subjected to so much psychological abuse and bullying over time as a young person. How much of a factor do you think that is for people? Because I can certainly see that I see the bullying, I see I see the anger and the hatred that's out there for it, the
Yes.
prejudice. Absolutely, it's there, and it would be foolish to not acknowledge that.
Correct. I agree. Number one, they're making an assumption that person was subjected to bullying. That hasn't come out yet. We don't know.
Right.
Number two, excuse me. I mean, I've always kind of looked feminine, was teased back in the 70s, which was a very different era than today. So I've had,
Yes.
I don't know, what's the 70s? I don't know, 5, 6 decades of this sort of thing going on in my life.
Yeah.
which is more decades than that person, though that's still an assumption that they're ever teased. And, I haven't killed anybody. So once again, it's up to the individual. To be transgender is not to be a homogenous group of people. We don't all have the same political beliefs. We don't all eat the same kind of ice cream, for instance. And we don't all make the same choices. And every individual, be them trans, Canadian, American, Maltese, we are all responsible for our own decisions. So because one American does something nasty doesn't mean all Americans are bad.
It doesn't mean that just because Donald Trump wants to take over Canada and make it the 51st state that every president wanted to or will want to do that. And okay, so somebody is saying a 12-year-old child does not have the mental capacity to make life-altering choices. And so how do you address the issue of that when children are involved in the process of transitioning?
Well, I agree with them. They're absolutely right. A 12-year-old child does not have the mental capacity to make the choices of transitioning. They're 100% correct. Who makes those choices with them are medical professionals. So, a 12-year-old just doesn't go to the local variety store or the Shoppers Drug Mart and say, oh, I'd like some hormones, by the way. Give me a bottle of 10. Here's $10. Ta-ta. It doesn't work that way. So they're correct. A 12-year-old child does not have the power of decision to make those choices. Medical professionals do. And when children do transition, it's done through the supervision of multiple medical professionals, including doctors, as well as psychologists and support people.
I know that people are going to argue that those doctors are biased and that they are maybe misguided and that they are influencing the child and convincing them to transition, and that this kind of convincing is happening in schools. Is that, do you feel that's correct, or is that an exaggeration?
Well, as we know, our teachers, and we have so many great teachers in this country, Canada, they are overtaxed, and we know that, and we certainly know that our medical establishment in this country, and I can particularly talk for Ontario, are certainly overtaxed. There's a lack of resources for our medical establishment, and certainly a lack of resources for the great teachers we have out there. So if it wasn't prudent to assist individuals in transition, it's not like these professionals, be it teachers or doctors, have the resources and the time to encourage this sort of thing. To say that our medical professionals and our teaching professionals have nothing to better to do with their time than encourage people to transition is absolutely frivolous, and it's not reasonable. We have a very overtaxed system.
But if you're born with male genitalia, and like, at what point, or how is it that as a child,
Yes,
this would come to the surface as an issue, a medical issue, I guess, that would somehow need to be addressed? I have a little bit of trouble with that. How is that child identified? Does the child say something like, gee, I feel like a girl today? Or is it that behaviors are noted by teachers or by doctors or by parents, or what is it that then gets a child into that stream where they're then moving toward transitioning?
that is a great question. Let me share my own experience. So I'm basically almost 60 now. I'm 5 months away from 60 years of age. In 1971, I was about 5 years of age and had some self-awareness, right? My brain was just physically developing to have some self-awareness. And I realized that I was a girl, and there wasn't the sort of information available that there is today. So I remember banging both my hands on my bed and saying, I can never be a girl. I can never be a girl. And I was very frustrated. And I thought, oh, I'm saying this too loud. I don't want my parents to hear this. But I banged my both hands on the bed till I fell asleep and crying that I can never be a girl. I can never be a girl, but I am a girl. So that's self-realization right there. And I'm sharing my own experience. I wished I had the type of resources available in the early 70s that some people have available today.
What is it that told you you were a girl?
I felt female. I didn't feel male. I didn't feel like the other fellas. And I used to justify it in my little 5-year-old brain. Well, all the other fellas I play with must feel like girls too. They're like me, they just don't say anything. And so I repressed it and I hid it because that was a bad thing to feel like a girl.
So
It was a bad
if you
thing to want to hang out
is
with
it
the other girls because you're like them. You want them as your friends because we think alike.
so is it that you felt like is it that you actually felt like a girl or that you were attracted to boys? I'm getting that you would say there's a difference between the two, which one would make
Mhm.
someone gay and the other
Yes.
one would make someone transgender.
Great question. No, it was not once again, gender identity is a very separate issue from sexual orientation. So it wasn't like I had a sexual attraction at 5 years of age to anybody. Actually, I had no concept of it. I just thought like the girls and had their interests. I didn't think like the fellas. I tried to get along with them, tried to do the same things, but I'd see, well, the girls are doing this and I want to do those things, you know? I want to have houses. I like baking stuff, you know? I don't like playing Vietnam in the sandbox because that was going on at the time with the other boys.
Hmm. See, when I was young, my father would not allow my mother to buy GI Joes
Okay.
because they were dolls,
All right.
right? And so I wasn't allowed to have them. Now, some of my friends had GI Joes and Jeeps and tanks and that stuff, and some of the girls that I knew had Barbies. So we used to
Yes.
put them all together and blow them all up. But so, but that makes me wonder, and I've often wondered is how much is my worldview or my self identity shaped by the conditioning that I was subjected to as a child because of experiences like that, where my father is saying, "Don't you play with those dolls," right?
Well, it's very good. And so you're talking about environmental conditioning. I mean, I grew up possibly in a much more conservative household, right? I mean, my parents were quite old. They came from the McCarthy era.
Mm,
And, you know, playing with dolls is nothing more than a blatant attempt by the World Communist Organization to destroy our youth. And I won't have anything like that. That would be my dad's response. I grew up in a very conservative, old school family. I mean, I'm quite old. I mean, my parents were born in 1930, both of them. So it wasn't conditioning. It's just the way I felt.
I
And,
see.
you know, once again, I wish I had the type of resources and the terminology that people do now. There's no such thing as transgender. It was just I felt like a girl. That's all I had. I didn't catch on to the term transgender, you know, till long after 1997 or 1993 when the term came out.
Mhm,
But the feeling was always there. I always was who I was. And I always, for a lot of my life, just tried to go along and fit in with society,
mhm,
which wasn't very productive. I mean, since I've coming out, I'm a lot more stable. I've done better socially. I have more friends than ever before. I'm more financially stable than ever before. I'm more happier than ever before. I'm more productive than ever before. I've crossed more hurdles than ever before in a constructive way. And that's my experience.
But when you were young, people, children, teens,
Mhm.
youths were not being offered any kind of surgeries, were they, to
No,
do
no,
or even medications?
not that I was aware of. And there are some exceptions to that, which would be for the adults, and it was very limited. There really wasn't much in the early 70s at all. That is correct.
Mhm.
Very few exceptions. There are some exceptions for adults, but few and far between.
So what is it that changed? Because I can't, like, I never paid attention to the degree where I can put my finger on, oh, there's the date. There was some new legislation passed, or, some change in society. What was it that changed so that now we have children who are being offered
Yes.
medical procedures and hormone replacement therapy, I guess is what it comes down to for children, puberty
Mhm.
blockers and things of that nature, which I know that is really, that is one of the uh, the the main issues for people
Yes, it
who
is.
are concerned about this, how children are being involved in this.
Yes, yes. That's a great question. So what changed? Well, something didn't change and something changed. So what changed? What didn't change is transgender people have been recorded for thousands of years. Even in the Hadiths, there's a case where there was a transgender person at the time, about the year 600 AD in Saudi Arabia, right? And that's recorded. So we've always existed. My opinion is, living as long as I have, what changed was the subcultural revolution, which occurred in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, where there's just simply now more awareness and respect for the individual. So, um, you have that in the civil rights movement, right? You have Malcolm X, right, who spoke in the mid '60s and the early '60s about all the racism there was against Black people, and what he said was very justifiable. The subcultural revolution came along, and now the world doesn't look at people, negatively because they are Black. I mean, the United States had a Black president, right? A wonderful man, President Obama. Same with the trans community, right? So it's not, even myself from a Maltese background, right? My family used to be called dark Maltese foreigners, right? And my mother was ashamed to be Maltese. She'd say, "Oh, I'm German." She wouldn't admit her nationality. And the subcultural revolution came along. Suddenly, it's not bad to be a dark Maltese foreigner anymore, like myself, right? So we're accepted. The same with trans people. It's not bad to feel like a girl anymore in 1971.
Hmm. I I do try to keep an open mind about things. I'm aware all the time that I have a particular worldview shaped by my own experiences and my own reality, right?
Mhm,
So I'm always looking at things through my eyes, not your eyes or someone else's. And so
mhm,
with that comes a filter of, my personal culture,
mhm,
and you can see how culture affects everything we do. If you look at, you know, historically through other countries, you look at some tribes in Africa, and I can't speak specifically to the tribes or the times, but neck stretchers for women,
yes.
piercings, things that certain groups of people have done to lips, ear modifications, just things that to me seem very odd
Mhm,
are beautification to people like that. So when you start to look at things in that way, it is partly culture, it is conditioning, it's
mhm,
environmental conditioning, it's social conditioning, social pressure, what is
mhm,
normal or
mhm,
considered to be normal. And
mhm.
so that's one of the things that came up in a conversation that I had with someone, since last night is, what's normal? Uh, is Are there really only two sexes, male and female? But what about, uh, these, and what about people who are born with both male and female genitalia?
Mhm.
People were, in denial of it. I'm showing them pictures of it. It's a real thing. It happens. So is that abnormal, or would I would say no, that's just a normal thing that happens sometimes. It's
Yes.
not common, but it's not
Mhm,
abnormal. It happens. It's a part of nature. So we have to deal with you just got to deal with the reality of that. And that creates difficult choices for people, because at that moment of birth, then the parents have to look at what's going on and say, well, we have to make a decision. Do we just let the child mature as they are, or because of cultural pressures,
mhm.
social pressures, do we ask the doctor to perform some operation at that point? in order to have this child then go through life and mature into an adult in a
Mhm.
way that they're viewed as others as normal. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm glad I never had to make a decision like that or go through that as a parent. I didn't have to, but there is a small percentage of people that need to do that. And even as a small percentage, I think in the United States today, there are probably 500,000, maybe 700,000 people in that
Mhm.
range who are living that reality in one way or
Yes.
another. So can you, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yes. Okay. Well, historically, these people were called eunuchs in many cases, and now we call them intersex. And intersex means many things. So, like you say, people can be born with a penis and a vagina. That's one form of intersex. Also, the chromosomes, I don't quite know the configurations, but like XXY or YYX, there's different configurations of that. There's now research that's cutting edge that they're finding secondary chromosomes that may lead to a person being transgender, right? That's cutting edge information. As far as I know, years ago, the doctors would make a decision based on certain parameters. If someone was born with a vagina and a penis, or in some cases, a very small penis, if the doctor would determine more or less at birth if that person should grow up female or male. I think at this point, I have a rudimentary understanding. I might be incorrect in this, but I think that people are allowed to mature a bit and then they make that decision. I might be wrong there. I read that somewhere. I can't even quote the source. Um, so what makes people normal? That was another part of what you mentioned. Well, I think a normal person is someone who's happy within themselves, accepts themselves, number one, is constructive towards society and contributes to society. And a normal person should leave this world, and the world should be better for that person being here. And that should be the judge of someone's character. For instance, let's take Pol Pot of Cambodia, right? The head of the Khmer Rouge from 75 to 79. Well, as far as I know, he was a cisgendered male, right? And he was quote unquote normal by some definitions. Well, he killed 2 million of his own people, and he was normal. So was he someone who left the world a better place? I mean, most of us, I think, would reasonably say no. Pol Pot was a destructive person, so he wasn't normal. I'm a transgender woman. I have a house. I have tenants. I work. I am not a ward of the state. I pay taxes. I contribute to my community in many, many ways. I contribute to my family. I have gardens. I give away free produce. I'm happy within myself. I'm constructive, and I hope that when I leave this world, it can be said that the world was a better place for Roslyn Dechert being here. And I think that makes me quote unquote normal.
And see,
Where Pol
when you
Pot
use
wouldn't
that
be
phrase,
normal.
yeah, when you use that phrase cisgendered, I think people even that word gets them confused. So
It does.
what does that mean?
That means when you were born with, say, a penis and you identify as a male and you identify as a male all your life, you'd be a cisgendered person.
Mhm.
It's
Or
that
what some
simple.
people would say is you're normal. That I guess would
But
be
once
what
again,
some people would say, right?
we looked at the definition of normal. So
Yeah.
perhaps they'd say Pol Pot was normal, who is a very destructive individual, and
Right.
or would I be normal, who is a constructive individual and has done constructive things? Perhaps some people would feel Pol Pot is normal. Well, I guess that is their that's their idea, and perhaps we can't change that concept of theirs. Yeah, I don't think he'd be a very normal fellow, Pol Pot. Perhaps some people think that, and I guess
Mhm.
that's up to them.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes the people running the world are pretty crazy. Is what it comes down to. I mean,
Well, some of them
seriously.
are entertaining, actually. I think Donald Trump is rather entertaining. He
Yeah.
he makes me laugh all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to look in the chat and see if anybody else has any other questions here.
Right.
If you have any questions for Roslyn, speak now. Now is
Please
your
ask
opportunity.
and give me hard questions,
Um,
not easy ones.
yeah, see, now this is a thing. Someone say, bring Fong Man on, Rick. He was trans and the toxic meds had him to stop his transition, someone said.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if maybe don't know who I'm talking about,
I don't
but
know, Farm Man.
yeah,
No.
Barry Thongman. he was part of the Freedom Convoy.
Okay.
He was out there in a thong and nothing else, holding
Okay.
signs at the protest.
All
And
right.
I got to know him too. He was on the program many times.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was odd because Barry, or Thong Man,
Mhm.
as he became known, was part of a movement that I think on the surface they were telling him, "We love you," but behind his back was saying, "That guy's a freak,"
Oh
right?
my.
And not respectful of him at all. And I don't know if he realized it. I think on some level he must. I always found him to be, pretty normal guy.
Mhm.
Uh, to me, he was basically kind of normal, even though he would go to protests in a thong. But
Okay.
I think he did that for shock value uh, as much as anything else. So yeah, I just mentioned that I haven't heard from him in probably a couple of years now. So I wonder where he is today. He's sort of fallen away from what people would refer to as the freedom movement. Well, anyway, I just mentioned Barry or Thong Man. What else is in the chat here? His name is Weldon. I called him Barry.
Okay.
Yeah, Weldon. That's true. Well, I'm looking for questions, folks. Don't remember that specific detail. Want it for sure on that one. Says I'm just reading stuff here. Well, how much pressure is there tonight, Roslyn, on your community as a result of all of this? For after, like, I'm seeing just a flood of, I'll say, political messaging that is
Yes.
transgender oriented, and I'm personally, I don't like it because it's
Mhm.
just it reached a fever pitch, and I think it's dangerous at this point, frankly, which is
Yeah,
one of the reasons I wanted you to come on.
as far as online, I've seen an enormous amount of flack against transgender people. I haven't experienced anything personally yet. I might. I live in a small town, so who knows? But yes, there certainly has been a lot of flack online. I mean, that's unfortunate. Um, I've always encouraged, in counseling trans people that and it's a hard thing to teach that, our community self-empowerment as individuals is very important. And I've read a bunch of books about it. It's a very hard thing to teach. It's actually really a question. And certainly it's going to hurt a lot of transgender individuals that are, frankly, not so sure of themselves or, don't have the maturity to handle this much flack. There's certainly going to be a very destructive tendency against trans people, and there's a lot of people who are transgender that are going to be hurting out there, and it's really not fair. This individual in British Columbia made a bad decision. They are 100% responsible for their actions. They're a very destructive, evil, wicked individual. And, it's hard to say, but they frankly should go to hell where they belong. But the myself and other transgender people should not pay for their horrible behavior. That's not justifiable. But certainly a lot of people are going to get hurt. And I will continue to stand up for myself and for my community. And I encourage all trans people, use this as an opportunity to, learn to cross this hurdle of this unjustifiable flack that we're getting and, move forward with your life, do constructive things, contribute to society, build yourself up.
Did you, it, is it, did you have a choice in this matter of whether you're a man or a woman? Or how do you view yourself now? Do you see yourself as a woman or as a transgender person? Um, and do you have a choice in the matter? Because I'm certain that that's the way some people interpret
Mhm.
what your situation is. They're saying they have a choice. They've made a choice. They're mentally ill. They
Right.
should just be a man or they should just be a woman. But um, if you're
Well,
born one way, you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying completely. As far as the people that say a person like me made a choice, gosh, I've heard of that before many, many times. And I said, to me, what wonderful wishful thinking. I wished I had a choice in this because I would have just stayed as how, the physical shape, how I was born. Because who wants a life where a bunch of your family members are horrible towards you? You get death threats, you get people wanting to beat you up, people disparage you constantly. Um, you know, um, we're horribly, horribly judged. I mean, I really wished it was a choice because I wouldn't have chosen to be transgender if I had a choice. I chose to be how I was in 1970. So it's really wishful thinking on their part.
Just getting binged here. Somebody might have a question. Bring that down. If I can make this phone work. There it is. A lot about removing like story time out of schools and leave introduction to transgender to medical
that's a very
experts
good
and the
question.
teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this storybook. So two things of this. Number one, these people are, oh, what do you call them? Uh, 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 Not transvestites. They're performers, right? There's a new word for them. Sorry, I forget. But what these people are performers.
Drag performers.
Drag. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for your help there, Rick. Yeah, drag performers. So number one, drag performers are not synonymous with transgender people.
Mhm.
Drag performers, some are trans, some are straight, some are gay, some might be lesbian, etc., etc., etc. So they're not synonymous with trans people. So someone who's dressed up in drag is not necessarily transgender. Point number one. Point number two. Well, I guess these people are looking for the good old days, and I remember the good old days where there wasn't any drag performers doing storytelling. They were so much better. I mean, I remember watching the news because we used to get the American news over the rabbit ears where I lived, and I remember watching the American news where we had so much better things to look at as a young person. I remember a girl in Vietnam. I remember an F-105 Thunder Chief, which was a neat looking jet, flying over a bunch of trees, and it dropped this big bomb that looked really neat. And then a girl about my age walked out of the smoke and the fire burning alive. I mean, it was so much better then when young people like me could experience this sort of thing than having a drag person read a storybook. So whoever says that, get a life. I mean, it's ridiculous. Do you want your kids to go back to 1970 and watch the Vietnam War on TV? Do you want them to have nightmares like I did for 6 months of getting up in the night thinking I'm burning alive?
I remember elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was constant among the boys in particular, calling other kids that they were picking fights with or picking on. It was just always, oh, you're an effing fag. You're gay boy, like constantly,
Yes.
right? Even then, it bothered me. I didn't engage in it. It just seemed just very mean spirited
Mm-hmm.
and stupid. But it was just constant.
Yes.
And so I remember the good old days. I remember
Mhm.
that. I remember cops beating up gay people
Yes.
and then charging the gay person for breaking the officer's hand
Mm-hmm.
with their teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know, and that went on into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I
And I
remember
know
that.
I know for a fact that stuff went on because I had conversations with cops as a reporter, a young reporter.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, I remember, I won't say the city because I don't want to speak out of school,
Right.
but I remember two gay men who owned a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, a couple of cops went to the restaurant as they were closing one night and beat up one of the two gay men.
Yes.
And in private conversations at the police station, as I was covering this, there were jokes made about this, right?
Mhm.
And I did talk on the phone with
Mhm.
the person who was beaten up.
Mhm.
And they thought long and hard about whether they wanted to do an interview on television. And I
Yes.
really wanted them to, but they were too afraid.
Yes.
And that was a case where the victim was charged with assault for breaking the
Yes.
officer's hand with
Yes.
his teeth, if you
Right.
get my meaning,
Yes.
right? So I know what was going on, and those were the good old days too. I
Yeah,
remember,
they weren't so
I
good.
yeah, I remember too going to police station. This is quite a long time ago, and this is not a transgender or gay thing or issue. This is about just straight up racism, and an
Right.
officer pulling it was like a cartoon of a black person
Uh-huh.
over the hood of a police cruiser, and
Yes.
on the and the caption was "Boys on the Hood."
Oh my.
Yeah.
Like the
So I mean,
movie. Yeah.
those were the good old days, right? Like
Uh-huh.
people want to go back to that. I, yeah, I think a lot about the before times. I call them before COVID, and I think back, and a lot of things were a lot better, but not for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was better back then, certainly, and I mean, if you go by the French economist Thomas Piketty, certainly equality as far as financial equality was much better when we grew up in the early 70s and in the 60s, right? When we were very
Mhm.
young. Certainly, as far as, equality and essentially the little guy doing better, in Canada and the US, and upward mobility was certainly much more predominant in the 60s and 70s and even the early 80s when we came of age. So those were, it was the good old days as far as that. But as far as a society, I mean, my mother went to the South in, I think it was 1960, and, saw Black people forced to get to the back of the bus.
Mhm.
We were called Maltese foreigners. My mother was ashamed of her own nationality. I mean, I think that's horrible. I'm a person with a Maltese background. I was born here, but I'm a Maltese background. Does that make me a bad person? No. So, there's a lot of frivolous civil rights issues back then. People were being treated how they shouldn't have been. As far as I'm not a gay person, I'm a transgender person. But as far as, gay people, which are part of my rainbow community, being treated badly, I mean, what did that accomplish? If I understood the story right, there was two business owners, both were gay, and a police officer beat up one of the business owners. Well, how does that help our economy? Maybe the next day he'd get in his truck and, I don't know, drive to the Ontario food terminal to pick up oranges to sell in his cocktails that night before. So, now someone didn't make a sale of gas. Some mechanic didn't get to replace the alternator in his truck, and some farmer at the Ontario terminal or commission merchant didn't sell a case of oranges. I mean, how did that help society? It didn't.
Mhm. Yeah, I, I've often wondered, thought about women who dress in men's clothes.
Mhm.
That's pretty normal, considered normal by our society. And yet, if a man dresses in women's clothes, it's considered not to be as normal.
Mhm.
Uh, and I see even some social media streamers who look very masculine to me, who are women,
Mhm.
or say they're women, and I'm like, I don't know, you look pretty masculine to me,
Mhm.
especially with all your tattoos and your you dress like I do as a man, but you
Mhm.
say so I again, that's a culture thing.
It is a culture thing, and we've been challenging that for a long time. I mean, there's a group called the Yardbirds. They were kind of the pre-Led Zeppelin. And in 1966, the year I was born, I'm quite old. I was born in 1966. There was a song, "Mister, You're a Better Man Than I," and it was all about, well, can you judge a person by the color of their tie? And is that, can you say people in a country all should die? And it challenged all these concepts. And so if someone, looks masculine or someone looks feminine, if someone's criticizing that, well, they have to ask themselves, how does that affect me? So, for instance, my neighbor doors down, they're a female, but they look very male. Perhaps they don't, perhaps they do. Well, tomorrow morning I have to get up at 5:30 and go to work. and I'm tired and I'm old and I'm sick and I have to go to work. So whether they look like a male or a female or frankly a Martian, I have to ask myself before I criticize them, how does it affect me? Tomorrow morning I have to get up early. I'm sick and I'm tired and I have to go to work, and that is Canada.
Mm. Somebody's asking me to ask you about gay pride parades, and
Mhm.
I have to say, I see, I don't understand, and I personally don't agree with parades in places, well, just out in the open where you're allowing people to walk down the street naked.
Right.
I don't agree with that. And yet when I and then you see and then but here's the thing.
Can I
I
stop you there?
Sure, yeah.
Not only do you disagree with people walking down the street naked,
Yeah.
generally the pride committees don't allow that. I mean, I was briefly involved with Quinte West Pride, and I was the secretary there of the pride committee, and we would not endorse people walking down the streets of Belleville, and it was also here in Trenton, right? We had a coffee shop that had pride. And you know, our committee would not endorse people walking down the street naked. And even my trans group, we had one girl who dressed very inappropriately. And, you know, myself as a co-facilitator and the facilitator of that group had a private meeting with that girl saying, you know, do not dress showing so much of your behind. That's inappropriate. So, um, you know, some people are okay with people walking naked. From my personal little world, I don't know about Toronto, but my little world, we certainly didn't endorse that in my transgender group. And I know that, you know, Quinte Pride really didn't endorse people walking down the street naked, at least when I was in it. So in my little world with the Pride community, that was not endorsed.
Yeah. Do you think that those kinds of behaviors or people who do that harm your community or test the
I don't
bounds of
really,
tolerance?
I don't know their reason, the individual's reason for doing that. All I can say is I myself, you know, as a female, right? And you know, just to let you know, I'm post-op. Probably some people are wondering, so I'm post-op. I have a vagina. I would not feel comfortable walking down the street with my breasts and vagina hanging out. You know, I can speak for myself. I would not do that. You know, for myself, it's appropriate to be covered up. I like to dress. I like to dress nicely and
I-
appropriately, and you know, that's me. So I can speak for myself. I don't know what would induce someone to walk down the street naked, so I can't really speak for them.
Hmm. You mentioned something, and I've been curious about this. I'm curious.
Yes,
I'm curious. Um,
please ask.
and you don't have to answer this one because this may be too personal. But
I'll
after
answer.
now, as is when you're post-op and you now have a vagina,
Yes.
is that fully functional? Can you, for instance, have an orgasm with after?
Good question. Yes, you are capable of orgasm, and you have a female orgasm where you're capable of multiple orgasms. So that's a great question.
So the operation itself doesn't reduce or limit sensitivity that would
No.
contribute to that experience?
No, what you do have to get used to, because I did have a male organ at one time, I'll share that with you, right? The male orgasm is different than the female orgasm. Um, and I became aware of that, right? There's some literature I read regarding that. And now, yes, I do experience the female orgasm. We do have multiple orgasms. So, yes, I hope that answers your question. And please ask more. I don't mind answering.
Thank you. I've never felt comfortable ever asking anybody that
I'm
question
glad you
before,
asked.
but hey, what a job I have. It opens doors to new opportunities to learn more and more things. It's true. I do have the privilege of learning things and getting into situations where I can learn about things in ways other people often can't. But now I can share it with everybody else right here in our community.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
I'm glad, I'm grateful for you being so open and forthcoming with the information.
Thank you for asking.
And here's the hypocrisy that I wanted to share with you. from
Mhm.
my perspective with regard to people walking down the street naked. I see so many Christians, right? Good church people. This is why I don't worry about going to church too much, because a
Mhm.
lot of the people that I see going to church all the time, um, they're the first ones to run off to Mardi Gras,
Mhm.
and they're the ones complaining too about people walking down the street naked. And then
Uh-huh.
they take off to Mardi Gras and start handing out beads to right to get women to take off their tops, and they get down there and get drinking, and I don't. I mean, I'm probably a much better Christian than most Christians because I don't smoke and I don't drink and I don't walk down the street naked and I've never been to Mardi Gras. Not to say that I wouldn't go,
Oh
but
my.
right. But I just you're upset about that, but you're going to that, and I'll tell you this: like, there's some people. I know that's you know who's in the closet. A lot
Mhm.
of people who present themselves as being very conservative and
Mhm.
offended by a lot
Right.
of these things going on. I know that there are even people among us,
Right.
even as we speak,
Mhm.
who um, are in the closet that way. Shall I put it that
Okay.
way?
Well, that's that's all right,
But
and
yeah,
I hope that they find the courage and the strength, and it's not an easy, it's
mhm,
not easy. It was not easy for me, to be honest. I hope that they find the courage and the strength to be themselves, because
mm.
we're all born with the inherent right to pursue our own destiny. So I encourage those people to to be who they are, and find the courage and the strength and the wherewithal to be who they are, because they don't owe me anything, they don't owe you anything, but they owe themselves that.
But you know what bothers me, Rosalind, is that some of the people who have even attacked me for just having you on the show, um, okay, they're also the same people who have attacked me for being maybe, in their view, too tolerant or whatever,
Right.
and
Hmm.
yet they're as they publicly and even have come on this program to say negative things in this vein
Hmm.
against other people that they say, oh, you're too gay or you're, you know, they're mocking folks. I can think of one person in particular who
Yes.
always goes to every pride parade, goes
Uh-huh.
to the gay bar after,
Oh my.
talks to me about, some person that had, breast implants and,
Uh-huh.
you know, transgender and asked to feel the breasts,
Oh
and
my.
and I'm like, wait a minute, you're making fun of these people here, but you're the one feeling the breasts while saying that you're totally straight, and
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm not buying it anymore, man. I'm not buying it because I didn't. I don't. I've never asked to. No, it's something. No,
Well, it's too bad
it's
there's
just
not more people like that, because I find them very entertaining, and apparently you do too. These are wonderful people.
it's okay. I just and yeah, and yet they're among the most vocal, and I hate gay people or whatever. You know, it's so I see it. I see it all the time.
Mhm.
Uh, that's my experience, and I
Yeah,
think
well,
I think it's sad.
it's an interesting thing, because I mean, throughout the human experience, there's lots of anomalies that makes people interesting, right? And you're seeing some of those anomalies. So these are
Yeah,
interesting people.
but what's happening right now is very dark because of what's happened out in Tumbler Ridge, the
Mhm.
impact on the community there, and and then the response that we're seeing. I think the
Mhm.
politicization of this, people exploiting it for political purposes,
Right.
and I think that is it's just at such a pitch now. So it's reached such a fever pitch. I fear for with I fear for where that's going to lead.
Well, it's
And
not, and if for many transgender people, it's going to, be more depression, more suicidal ideation, at the very best, more stress. Um, even for myself, I'm concerned about my community having to face all this flack, and it's unfortunate. We do live in a very polarized political world, and I think people have trouble seeing the source of that, and the world is a harder place in my experience as it was. When I started working part time about 1980, and the world's certainly become a more harder place for the Canadian working person. And I think people are looking for answers, and they're seeing things that have changed in this world, say from the 70s, and they're attributing the difficulties that they're experiencing, and they are experiencing these difficulties to those changes, rather than attributing these difficulties to the inequality that now exists, that didn't exist as much when some of us older people came of age. And
This,
they've made those choices.
see, I have to wonder how much of this is driven, though, by technology, by medicine, by medical technology, by the availability of drugs and medical procedures, which previously were, never offered, really never available. Or am I mistaken in that? Because now, because of the technology,
Uh-huh.
you are giving people choices, and then those are choices that were previously not available. That
Uh-huh.
makes it more prominent, and then you're opening all of these other issues about, well, who should pay for that procedure, and if
Uh-huh.
that's a choice, should that be a choice? And then I'll take it to another place after I just get your comments on that.
Yes. So you're asking me as far as the medical technology that's available to trans people now, as opposed to say 120 years ago. Do I understand the question correctly?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
That's
Yes.
kind of where I'm
Well,
at.
that's a very good question. So, um, the transgender people have always been around. So there was lots of trans people around 120 years ago, and they would transition with what they had as best as they could back then. And we transition now as best as we can, which with what's available now. So the technology is not something that accashionated transgender people. We existed before that technology.
Mm. See, we've talked here also about technocracy. We've talked about Elon Musk. We've talked about Neuralink. We talk sometimes on this program about pretty complex ideas
Mhm.
and futuristic ideas, or maybe even ideas that are upon us right now,
Mhm.
through integration of human beings into the matrix.
Mhm.
Talking about transitioning or
Yes.
creating transhumans, where we become you know, part of artificial intelligence. And at
Right.
that point, you know, then as our as human beings become part of AI, there's
Yes.
a singularity that develops as an
Mhm.
individual. Are we losing our individuality? Are we then maybe being put into a position through the technology where we
Right.
get to choose whatever we want to be? I can be a man, I can be a
Mhm.
woman very easily at that point, because in
Mhm.
my mind, which is part of the matrix, and I'm jacked in through a Neuralink, right?
Yes.
And now I'm
Mhm.
becoming a transhuman, which
Mhm.
means I can be kind of anything I want to be. I can be half a bird, half a person. I can in the matrix, I can be
Right.
anything and experience that as reality,
Yes.
because that is my reality, becomes my reality, because the technology allows me to morph into that. I become symbiotic with
Right.
the matrix, right?
Yes.
Do you
Mhm.
understand what I'm saying? So
I
is
understand
this
what you're
I
saying.
think this is one of the things that concerns people, is
Mhm.
that they see the medical technology and the transitioning that's happening medically, physically
Mhm.
with people as a step toward
Right.
the creation of a transhuman race, which may not be that far off, because,
Okay.
with Neuralink, our
Mhm.
minds going to be connected maybe directly to an AI existence.
Right. I think people are, well, number one, this is a lot of supposition, right? So,
Sure.
supposition, maybe in a year they'll invent a rocket and then, I'll be on Mars and we'll be doing this podcast. Me, you're here on Earth and
Mhm.
I'm on Mars. So it's all supposition, right? So there's limitations to physics. AI, it's called artificial intelligence, but you can give a name to anything. And what it is a bunch of algorithms that are running in binary, which is something that's approximately 100 years old.
Mhm.
People are putting suppositions there on technology that might not even be physically possible. So I guess you can make suppositions of anything. I mean,
Sure.
I'm 60 years of age. Perhaps the technology exists next year that'll have a child, and there'll be a little Roslyn running around your next podcast, right? So everything can be a supposition.
Yeah. But I guess one of the arguments, as I'm just thinking this through, that people would say there's only two sexes because Rosalind can't have a baby.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Can I have a baby? No. I have a neighbor. She's 27 years of age, and she had a problem down there, right? So they took out her ovaries and everything else, and she can't have a baby as well. So, maybe she's not a woman now either. They should
Mhm.
go ask, a bunch of women that have cervical cancer and women who are postmenopausal that have to have something removed down there. And I assume that's millions of women in all likelihood in Canada, and perhaps there's millions of other women that aren't women as well. So I guess you could
Well,
say anything. Is
that's
that
exactly
reasonable?
right.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I've thought about that too. My
Hmm.
father just had his hip replaced. So
Right.
is he part machine and part man now? Is he
Yes.
transhuman just because he has a piece of metal in his hip? Right.
Yeah.
And at what
Yeah.
point do you stop being human and become and more machine than man? I think
Mm,
he's still the man that he always was,
mm.
but he
I,
just
I
has
think
a
I
hip.
think I think we're all human beings. I mean,
Yeah.
this world was created from the Big Bang, right? I mean, we can't even take a handful of topsoil and really build anything of any significance from that. So, uh,
Yeah.
we're taking a bunch of algorithms. It's simple mathematical equations. I think the concept of algorithm, as far as I know, existed about 1600 years now. And we call this thing artificial intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence. AI systems are not. They can't think. They simply follow math. It's quite simple math. It's not even complex math. It's our biggest thing, you still have to take a tractor and a plow and break soil, right? Like you did in 1908 when they came up with the first tractors, Ford Motor Company. Till that soil, plant carrot seeds, plant wheat seeds, grow the wheat. If there's a frost, you're not growing any wheat. If there's a drought, you're not growing any carrots. And eat. The
Mm.
technology really hasn't changed that much. My dad had a 1964 Pontiac Laurentian. It had four wheels and a steering wheel. They're telling me cars are so much more advanced now. Well, I have a 2016 Toyota Corolla. It has a four wheels and a steering wheel. And personally, I don't see any difference between it and the Pontiac Laurentian other than it
Mm.
doesn't drive as well.
Yeah. The old ones had more chrome too and fins.
Yeah.
See if you
My dad's car looked prettier than mine.
they did have style back then, and now they're bubbles on wheels. They're appliances largely. In fact, the Canadian International Auto Show is on
Uh-huh.
this week. It just opened today. Media Day was yesterday. I
Oh
didn't get to
my.
go because I was too busy sitting here. So I missed it. But just letting people know if you want to go up there and see the newest bubbles on wheels, you can do that. And they're all digitized now. So as Doug Ford says, you can go get your spy car. Although
Oh
not too many
my.
of them made in China. They're all still
No.
made around here.
Yeah.
Um, the technology does change society though. And when I think of the medical technology, a case in point would be the birth control pill. So
Right.
with the introduction of the pill, right, and that level of efficacy applied to birth control, that
Mhm.
changed the relationship between men and women, largely because it opened the door to more sexual freedom.
Mhm.
And so you can see just from that example how there can be profound changes on society through medical technologies and medications So
Perhaps
thought,
I think it was a factor, but also education. I mean, as well, it's shown globally that the more educated people are, the less children they have. So perhaps the birth control pill, which came out about my time, about 1961, 62, I believe, was a mitigating factor as well.
yeah. But I mean, it does. Some would say it leads to more promiscuity. Others would say more sexual freedom. It
Mhm.
certainly allows women to engage in uh, sexual activities for recreation if they so choose without as much risk. And so
Okay.
that has changed the dating dynamics, I think, for men and women and just people in general, regardless of what, well, certainly for men and women,
Mhm.
maybe not as much for gay men or gay women. But for, heterosexual men and women, I think it has had profound effects on relationships, courting, if you want to call it that. I'm kind of old fashioned that way. Uh,
Possibly for some individuals, possibly not for others, right? I mean, with my partner, we just met essentially by the Trent River, right? So I never really got into the electronic dating. I haven't heard that it's that productive, right? So
mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, that even, decades ago, 70s, 80s, I think that the birth control pill led to the sexual revolution,
Okay.
free love, hippies. If it feels good, do it, because women
Mhm.
could then engage in sexual activity without as much fear of getting pregnant. So, although that still happens too. And
Mhm.
then you've got the abortion question, and I don't want to get into that tonight because people are going to freak out in the chat over that.
That's a
Uh,
very divisive issue, isn't it?
oh, it is. All of this is. That's the thing, though, right? And this this isn't going to go away, no matter
No.
because of this shooting. It doesn't matter if this political party gets into office or that one, and it doesn't matter if they pass a law that says you can't have drag queen story time in schools anymore, or if the
Mhm.
government stops funding that stuff. And my personal view is that I think sometimes government has gone too far and they've pushed this stuff into schools, I
Mhm.
think intentionally, to kind of get it into the face of some people
I
that they know
agree
will
with you.
piss people off.
We need to bring back the Vietnam War on TV for 5-year-olds and
Oh,
6-year-olds like we had. That was
no.
so much better.
No, no, it wasn't. Those were that was all terrible stuff too. That's the thing though, right? We remember those before times
Uh-huh.
as being better because we were kids.
Yeah. But
And
they weren't necessarily better. So
right, because
yeah.
I didn't have to pay rent and I didn't have to pay the utility bill and I didn't have to go to work every day and I
Mhm.
wasn't aware of, all of the crap that my parents had to put up with. I didn't
Right.
my mom probably putting up with sexual harassment in the workplace on
Yes.
levels that you wouldn't have to deal with today. And
Correct.
just and my dad dealing with stuff that I'm probably never going to be aware of because
Yes.
of the social issues of those times,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So it was different times. I think in many ways they were better, but in other ways they were a lot worse too.
Yeah, I think there was good and bad back then as there's good and bad today. I think we've progressed socially a bit more today, but certainly I think from a financial standpoint, for the Canadian worker, it's a lot more difficult than it was, say, in 1985 when I came of age.
Yeah, there's no question about that. But those
Mhm.
are economic issues.
Yes,
The
they are.
though, and we've had economic problems before. That's
Mhm.
the thing. I listen to, especially some. I just hear people, oh well, times are so much better, and look at that the country's doomed. No, it's not,
No.
man. Like, try growing up in the 1930s
Yeah.
during the Depression. It was way worse than
Yeah.
anything we've
My mom
experienced.
told me about that. Yeah, I mean, she grew up in the 1930s
Yeah.
on a farm, right? And yeah, it was no running water, no indoor facilities. They ate potatoes and cabbages that they kept in the ground in the winter and chickens, and that's all they ate. There was no variety. What was supper? Potatoes, cabbages, chicken. What's supper going to be in March? Potatoes, cabbages, and chicken. What's supper going to be in April? Same thing. Yeah, they really did have it difficult. And my mother shared with me growing up in those years.
And I laugh too, because it's not just about numbers, like dollars in the bank. Like, how many dollars do you have in the bank? It's about quality of life. And
Mhm,
when I think back, you don't have to go back for very far to remember the introduction of like plasma screen TVs,
mhm.
$10,000.
Yeah,
Now they're $200, and
yeah.
everybody's got a microwave oven and a refrigerator. It not
Mhm,
an ice box, right?
mhm,
Like, you just go back and you watch like the Honeymooners television show, one of the first
mhm.
shows on TV, right? They had an ice box. The Iceman
Yes.
would have to bring the ice, and you put that in your ice box, and it's
Mhm,
melting, and that's what's keeping your food fresh, or trying
mhm,
to. And your milk is probably spoiling, and then you're going to drink sour milk and get sick,
mhm.
right? Uh, no, times sucked in a lot of ways. Things sucked
Yes.
back then in so many ways. It was
Yeah.
much harder to live than it is today.
In
And
some ways it was. Yeah. In
yes,
some
in
ways
some
it
ways.
was.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and there was a lot more of cops having their hand broken by gay men with their teeth. There was a lot more of that. There was. I remember. I remember the level of intolerance. I remember, I'm seeing it resurge. I see it coming back. The prejudice, the
Mhm,
bigotry, the hatred, so much that I remember from the 70s coming
mhm.
back
I
today.
have seen a trend, I would have to say, in the last 5 years where, yeah, it is coming back. And I think when people don't have answers for the
Mhm.
difficulties, which are very real, that they're experiencing, they tend to look for reasons, and those reasons might not necessarily be correct. And we've seen this in history before. In the 1920s in Germany, they had some of the most advanced medical information and about transgender people.
Mhm.
The general population, it was 1930, right? 1931, 1932, the bad years of the Depression. They're looking, why were things so good in 1927 and now it's 1933 and things are horrible? Why are they so horrible? Well, a man came along to say it was certain nationalities and gay people and trans people. And he said the reason it's not so good anymore, like it was in 27, are these reasons. We need to get rid of this nationality, these trans people, and these gay people. It's going to go back and be great. These people said wonderful. Well, it wasn't great. So history repeats itself, and we're not at that extreme yet. Hopefully, we never get there. But people are looking for reasons why they're having a hard time, and people of influence like Donald Trump, Pierre Pollier in this country are saying, in part, it's the trans people. You get rid of the trans people, it's going to go back to 1985, kiddo. And some people are buying that. People are
Yeah.
hurting, and and the hurt is real, and they're looking for answers, and some of their answers are wrong. And
And
they
I
did that before. They did that before in 1930.
They did, and I know it depends on which version of that history you read, but one version will say that the Nazis, or Adolf Hitler and
Hmm.
his party, um, cleaned up the decadence
Hmm.
of the time, and they'll
Yeah.
refer to all the sinful things that were being, the activity, the the sexual promiscuity in Berlin, and all
Hmm.
of the prostitution, and he's and the gay people, and but they're referring to that as decadence, and I
Well,
see the
and he made
same.
it so much better. I mean, take the Dresden firestorm, 120,000 people burned alive
Yeah.
from the incendiary bombs from B-17s and B-29s in 1944 in one night. He made it so much better. I mean, that was such a better world, 100,000 people dying a night from burning to death. It was so great. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I and I see that the immigration issue is being used as a tool politically.
Hmm.
Uh, I think I do agree that the numbers of people coming in uh, is too high, because we're not able to absorb that many people. And that quickly. So I understand you need controlled numbers to make sure that you
Yeah.
have schools and you have enough houses built for people, and it doesn't create spikes in the housing market and the rental market. And you need to take care of people, right? And you have to have proper health care for everyone. So I get all of that, but
Yes.
I see what's going on in the States and the way that Donald Trump and MAGA, the way they're trying to deal with the immigration problem. I don't think that they're dealing with an immigration problem. I think they're just rounding up people they don't like and putting them on buses and then planes and flying them out of the country with no due process and putting them in prisons in El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some legitimacy. I mean, you can't have, say a country like Canada, right? You can't have millions of people coming in here illegally. It will overtax the system one way or another. That's one aspect of it. So there's there's some truth to that. However, there's a lot of mistruths. Yeah, they target visual minorities. That's not right. They're once again using immigrants as a scapegoat for our own internal mismanagement of macroeconomics. There hasn't been a New Deal president in the United. I can speak this for the U.S. There hasn't been a New Deal president in the United States since Richard Nixon, of all people. He was a New Deal president. That worked very well. That created the equality that our parents enjoyed, that you and I enjoyed when we came of age. Younger people have no memory, no experience of that. So once again, they're looking for scapegoats, and who better than somebody that looks different than you, talks different than you, and has a bit of a different culture than you. And they're striking at those people. It's I empathize with the hardship people are going through, and it's very real, but their solutions are not constructive solutions. Going after the immigrants is not going to mean that you're going to go from driving a 2003 Chrysler to a 2026 BMW. That's not going to help your case, and people need to realize that.
They're asking me to ask you about Soji 123.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. What is Soji? Can you
Well,
explain?
let me get you an exact definition of it, because I hear that phrase and I want to be accurate. So I'm going to look it up to make sure that I describe it exactly correctly. It's what's going on in schools largely, right?
All right.
So, I'm going to go to AI and I'm going to ask Mr. Grok.
Okay.
So let's go and ask Mr. Grok. Because we do that sometimes around here. So we'll get Grok in on the conversation. Okay. Let's bring up Grok. Here we go. Hey, Grok, my dude. Are you ready to rock? Hell yeah, Maverick. I'm locked, loaded, and caffeinated to the gills. Let's crank this thing to 11. What's on your mind tonight, my man? Grok is hilarious. It makes me want to become a transhuman. Hey, my dude. Please explain what Soji, a 1, a 2, a 3 is. Yo, Maverick, let's break it down straight. No fluff. Soji 123 stands for sexual orientation and gender identity 123. It's an inclusive education initiative, not a separate curriculum or mandatory case, mainly in British Columbia schools, created by the ARC Foundation in partnership with the BC Ministry of Education, Teachers Union, school districts, and LGBTQ plus groups starting around 2016. Do you want me to continue, or do you know what I'm talking about?
I understand at this point, yes.
Okay. So he says, if I got follow-ups or want me to dig into specifics, fire away, dude, but we'll throw it over to you first, Roslyn.
All right. So if I understand the question, it's what do I think of Soji then, if I understand the question correctly?
I guess.
Well, I mean, even as a child, we had sex education, right? They're simply trying to bring awareness in the school that there's different types of people with different sexual orientations, different gender identifications out there.
Mhm.
I don't see anything wrong with that. I think, as a country, one of our strengths is to include diversity in our society, and we've been doing that ever since Maltese Canadians, once again, came here in 1890 and started farming in northern Ontario. And integration, I think, is a strength for us. We have French Canadians. We have French as an official language. I've been to Quebec. I love Quebec food. It's great. I love the people in Quebec. I love Montreal. I love the countryside in Quebec, the ocean in Quebec. So I think that diversity for any society, and particularly for Canada, has proven beneficial for our country. And teaching that there's people, once again, of different gender identification and sexual orientation, and that they're people like anything else, is continuing a trend that has made Canada strong and will continue to make us strong as it has for the last 200 years. I think it's a great thing.
Gonna look in the chat here. Anybody have any questions? Questions. Anybody have questions? I was very reluctant, Rosalind, to suggest that we even take questions from people tonight, because I'm always afraid these days of what we're gonna get.
Well, that's okay. If we get bad questions, that's okay. It's good that they are sharing their opinions openly and honestly, because I think there's a lot of people hurting out there. And, as I've said many, many times, their hurts are very real. And, I think by doing your Wonder for show, maybe we can help people. I think that's a great thing.
And
Especially in these very sad times of this, once again, this horrible, horrible tragedy that happened out in British Columbia.
And 1272B51. I think that means something like I too want to be the 51st state, because I think that's what it means. Anyway, I don't. These are people are hiding their identities. Says 5, 6, 7-year-olds do not need to understand their sexual identity before they know their times tables. And then Cindy comes in and says, so true. At the time, we thought it was ridiculous. I don't know if that's a comment directly related to that. I don't think it is. Anyway, I'll just get you to comment on that about the 5, 6, and 7-year-olds do not need to understand their sexual identity before they know their times tables.
So I have a question for the person. Why don't they need to understand that? Why do they need to understand there's many different people? I'm not sure if they teach just the 5 and 6-year-olds. Once again, I'm not in school. I think we had sex education when I was about 12. I mean, times have changed. But why not teach that not everybody is like us? So my answer to this. So my name's Roslyn Dechert, right? I'm me. Not everybody in the world, including yourself, Rick, is like me. You and I probably have some things that you and I think differently. So, if I like chocolate and you don't like chocolate, what's wrong with that? We're different. And we should learn that despite you like chocolate and I don't like chocolate, that doesn't make us bad people. Non-chocolate eaters like myself are not bad people. Chocolate eaters like yourself are also not bad people. So teaching individuals that the whole world doesn't think like themselves, and that's okay, I can't fathom how that would possibly be in any way destructive.
Yeah, I think I think some people think of it that way because they are viewing it as being immoral or unnatural because of their worldview, their religious views, their cultural views.
Well, I mean, they have the right to hold those opinions, and maybe when their children come home, with the information they've received from the school, it would be nice if the children and the parents were open enough to speak to their children of what they heard in school. And then I think those parents should tell their children their opinions on that, so that the children can hear from both sides and make their own decision on their own ethics and morality. So I think that's a discussion that parents should have with their children. And if they're conservative parents, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being conservative. And you know, have dialogue with your children. Let the children get the information from the schools, and you know, the parents need to step up to the plate, particularly the conservative ones, and have those discussions with their children, so that the children can get an education that's absolutely categoric, and as they become adults, make their own decisions based on the information they've got. So you know, I encourage dialogue on all sides on this. I think it's wonderful.
Mm. See, when I was that age, and someone's messaging saying that this goes on even in kindergarten, and we
Mhm,
have seen drag queen story times in kindergarten classes. I don't
mhm,
know what the content of the stories was.
mhm,
I think there have been cases where stories have been done where they're suggesting or saying or showing that there might have been some sexual content or sex
mhm.
education content or whatever
Right.
that directed to the children even
Yeah.
at that age.
Yes.
Do you think that's appropriate?
I think the question is great, but I asked that person, I have a person asked, I have a question for that person. So obviously this issue is distressing them.
Mhm.
Why did we never hear in the 1940s about my Uncle Paul, who now passed away, who used to stand on his roof in Malta and watch the British and Canadian pilots shooting down the German Messerschmitts and the Italian bombers that were blowing up Valletta? You know, I think that was something, you know, why not address that? Why not address the children who are watching their parents get incinerated and their neighbors getting incinerated in Ukraine? Why is that not brought up? And
Mhm.
that's happening today. Maybe, okay, that was fine. That was 1943, the Battle of Malta my Uncle Paul was in. Why don't we address some real problems? Children in wars, my own family in wars, the Ukrainians in wars happening throughout the world, wars in Syria that were fairly recent. Why aren't we addressing that and what the children are going through? Just like I never slept for 6 months without having a nightmare about burning alive after what I saw on TV. I really think this whole thing about drag queens telling stories to children is totally moot. There's a lot more horrible things happening in the world. I'd like to hear about them because we need to make some changes about the poor children and what they're going through in Ukraine tonight and today.
Well, there is that. DC123 says grooming is grooming. Leave the kids alone.
Okay. Well, what do they mean by grooming? You know, what
I
does
think that I
uh,
think when I hear that, I think people are of the mind that in some way they're being prepped for some sort of sexual abuse.
okay, so
That's what
that means
that I
that
think, but
that's what
I'll
grooming.
ask the person to clarify
Yeah,
that. I
I
won't
don't
put
quite
words
I
in
don't
their
quite
mouth.
understand what grooming means.
Yeah, see, and DC123 says, "Stop trying to justify why our kids are being groomed and sexualized, Roslyn."
Oh, I see. I see. Well, you know, I agree with that person 100%. They should stop grooming their children towards, you know, having a view that everybody thinks like them in the world. So, grooming is a horrible, horrible thing, and they need to stop preventing their children from observing and understanding how the world works. So, they're terrible groomers. They need to stop it now. It's a bad thing.
DC123 says, "Obviously, you are not a parent." Hmm.
I'm a grandparent. And I encourage my grandchildren to understand many things of the world. We give them a lot of information. They get a perspective from our parents. We're the older generation. They get a bit of a different perspective from us. And I encourage my grandchildren to gather as much information as possible and make their own decisions in the future, but don't do it with limited information. And I think it's reasonable that when a person makes a decision as they get older, they should do it objectively.
CBC Brown says, "It's not mute, it's indoctrination of children. How about we educate them instead of indoctrinate them?"
All right. Well, he needs to stop indoctrinating his children because obviously he's not telling his children that there are gender, you know, people. There's gender identification people out there. There's sexual orientation people out there. There's people of all different colors, all different religions. So he needs to stop indoctrinating his children in a world that does not exist. Whether we like it or not, there are many different people in Canada with many different ideas and many different ways of being. He needs to stop indoctrinating his kids that there's only one type of Canadian because we are a country of diversity.
Mm-hmm. CBC Brown says, "I don't have children. I know better in this time." I don't know what
Well,
that means.
that's his decision then, I hope, that's his decision not to have children. I respect that. That's okay.
What else do we have in here? D's123, exactly as they get older, not when they are young. So I guess what some people are saying is leave the young kids completely, out of this and deal with it later. I remember when I was in elementary school, they had sex education lessons starting around grade 6. And
Okay.
the lessons dealt primarily with things like birth control, to educate young people, because even at that age, I think you had girls coming of age where they, were maybe able to even have children. So make them aware,
Right.
educate them so that they can
Right.
protect themselves. And talking about the physical process of maturing and becoming an
Yes.
adult and going through puberty, which we were all going through at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there were lessons about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot about, touched a little bit, I guess, on relationships, but not that much.
Right.
It was all very clinical, I guess is
Right.
the word, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think perhaps I'm a bit older than you, so I remember, that sort of education being at 12. But anyone who grew up on a farm like I did for part of my life, you got a 6 education at 3. I mean, just look at the chickens and what the animals were doing, and that was right in front of you. So, I guess it's an advantage to growing up partially rural that you get to know a city life and a country life, and I think it gives us an advantage. Once again, I think the more information an individual has, I always thought that that gave me an advantage in life rather than a disadvantage. Just having that information of knowing how food grows, knowing how nature works, right? It gives me. I always felt it gave me an advantage over people that just grew up in an urban way.
Yes, me as well. I grew up in the city, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a time when we had space enough in our yard that I had a pigeon coop and I
Mm-hmm.
had pigeons. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned as a child having pet pigeons, homing pigeons, show pigeons, fantails, powder pigeons, all these different kinds of pigeons, that pigeons are naturally bisexual. And
Oh, interesting.
if two male pigeons mate, you
Mm-hmm.
get no eggs. If two female pigeons mate, you get 4,
Interesting.
but they don't hatch because they're not fertilized. And if
Ah,
you get a male and a female that mate, you get 2 eggs and they hatch. And then I had more pigeons.
interesting. Okay, well,
But
I actually did not know that. Thank you for sharing, Rick.
and so that I think helped shape my view of sexuality. Honestly,
I'm
is
sure it
that
did.
reality?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that might make some people very uncomfortable. What are you talking about? There are only only 2 kinds of pigeons.
Oh
No,
my.
they're kind of like into the free love thing, man. It was like Hippieville out in my pigeon coop every day.
Oh,
They were all
that's
banging
funny.
each other.
Oh boy.
You never knew what you were gonna get. But if you had 4 eggs, it was like you might as well cook them. I never ever ate any pigeon eggs, but
Yeah,
I did breed them. I had lots of pigeons.
neat.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was an education, that's for sure. So that's see, there's truth, right? That's
Yes,
nature.
it is. Yes.
Whether you like it or not,
Hmm.
yeah. And it's hard to tell whether a pigeon's male or female. You can't tell just from looking at them or the way they behave. You don't know
Right.
until they lay those eggs.
Yes. Yes.
That's the telltale sign. So oh, and here's something else. See,
Okay.
talking about parenthood, right? Something
Yes.
else I learned from the pigeons, and this will transition or segue into a thing about parental rights. If a male and a female pigeon mate
Yes.
and they have eggs, right?
Yes.
And the female will sit on the eggs and incubate them, keep them
Right.
warm. You can let the male pigeon out of the coop, and it will
Mhm.
fly around, but it will always come back, because
Nice.
it comes back to protect the nest
Nice.
and the eggs. It does it always. So even pigeons have parental instincts.
Yes, they
A
do.
male father pigeon will come back to protect those eggs. How about that?
Lovely.
Isn't
Lovely.
that something?
Yes, it is.
Which segues into the question, a conversation that I had yesterday with people about parental rights, and
Mhm.
what, well, this political party is all for parental rights,
Yes.
and I'm interested in your view on that, because especially if you have a child that's born
Mhm.
intersex or with
Mhm.
both sets of genitalia, well,
Mhm.
does that child, as a baby, they can't advocate for themselves because
Correct.
they can't speak. They
Mhm.
don't even know what's going on, right?
Mhm.
So now it's up to the parent at that point,
Mhm.
or even later, as a child is a minor,
Mhm.
does the parent have the right? And here's the thing. I say, people who are out there saying they're all about, we want parental rights, I think the majority of these people don't really want parental rights at all. What they want is they want the state to intervene to make sure that these children are not subjected or exposed to any of these lessons. They don't want them exposed to drag queen story time. I want my
Mhm.
parental rights to stop that. I want my
Mhm.
parental rights to prevent these children,
Mhm.
maybe not even their own children, but to prevent children from going through this process. And I'm not saying whether I agree or I disagree. I'm just saying that let's be honest about this. It's not
Mhm.
for most of these people, in my view, it isn't about parental rights at all. It's about something very political or cultural or religious, or their belief system, their worldview. They want the schools operating the way they want them operated.
Mhm.
They don't want their children going to a school where other children are transitioning. They don't want them exposed to these things. That's what they want. They
Right.
want
Well,
to impose their worldview, their culture,
yeah.
their religion on to other people. Really, in my opinion, I think that's the
Mhm.
truth. But
I mean,
your
I guess these
thoughts?
people have to ask themselves what advantage, because obviously, obviously their intentions sound like they're in good faith.
Hmm.
So, the question is for them, what advantage do you think you're providing your child by not just showing them, only a particular side of how the world works? Why would that be advantageous rather than showing your children, um, the complexity and diversity, which is a reality of the world? So why is it advantageous not showing them the world's reality? And so it's really an internal question for them. I can't see
Yeah,
how that
I,
would
I
be
think
advantageous.
I think for a lot of people, it's about innocence, or trying to preserve a child's innocence, or what we think of as a child's innocence,
Hmm.
um, without even having them think about sexuality at on any level,
Hmm.
to sort of protect them from, I guess, protect, uh, so that they don't have to think about it because they're afraid, maybe,
Well, I'm very
of
glad
something.
that these people share my concern about protecting children's innocence. And I'm sure every one of these human beings is donating at least $100 a month of their paycheck to help the war effort in Ukraine, so that those Ukrainian children who are watching people get slaughtered in the most horrible ways every day can have their innocence protected. So I'm so glad that these people share my priority to protect children's innocence. It's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, I do see both sides of it. I understand. I mean, they don't want children sexualized. Anything involving sex and children, I honestly become uncomfortable with. Um,
I mean, I
but
don't
I
I don't know what age this starts. I'm not in
yeah, I don't
school.
Yeah, I don't. Well, they're saying
My
kindergarten,
grandchild
right?
is 12,
Yeah.
so he's never really shared anything like that personally with me. They're in the school. I don't know where this information is coming from. So I mean, I imagine a 4-year-old doesn't have to know about anything about
Well,
sex.
see, I
You
do.
know, I
I
think that'd be unreasonable, but I don't
they,
objectively know the Canadian school system when children nowadays are introduced to this sort of thing. And I don't know where this information is coming from, so it's really hard to make an opinion. But I will say, you know, I'll make a judgment call here. A 4-year-old doesn't have to know about sex. No.
mhm,
You know,
mhm.
I had my sex education in my school at 12. That was in the 70s. I think that was a prudent time. Maybe it's a bit earlier, maybe not. You know, I don't really know the
Yeah,
source of this information is coming from. I haven't logged into the I
I
don't even
see.
know, it's the Canadian Federation of Teachers website to see the recommendation to teach them about arithmetic, long division, and
Yeah.
when children should learn about sex. I really don't know where this information is coming from. It's
Let's
hard to
ask.
find.
Let's ask Grok.
Okay.
Hey, Grok, my man. What age do children in, I'll say
Yeah.
Ontario, Canada, begin being exposed to, if that's the right word, uh, sex education in public schools?
Mhm. And I mean, also, how is that presented? So, you know, if you tell a 7-year-old, well, mommy and daddy get together and have a child, that's one form of sex education. Telling them actually how mommy and daddy get together and have a child is a different form of sex education.
So here's
Now,
the
so
answer
what does that
from
mean?
here's the answer from my man Grok. He
Mm-hmm.
says, "Yo, Maverick, what's good?" In Ontario public schools, the human development and sexual health component, what most people call sex ed, is
Right,
part of the health and physical education curriculum
right.
for grades 1 to 8. It's been in place since 2019.
Okay,
Revised version starts from grade 1, and at that level they're learning the correct names for body parts, including private parts,
okay,
and why using proper terms matters for
okay.
safety, reporting issues, or getting medical help, and basic
Yes.
respect for their bodies. No explicit sexual stuff, it says.
Okay, well, that sounds actually very, very reasonable, right? You know, maybe as children they have some sort of a medical problem down there, and they need to communicate that to their family doctor. So that would seem prudent and
Or
reasonable
maybe
to
they have
me.
an uncle who's abusing them and they need to have the right words so they can tell somebody.
Correct.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely,
yeah,
Rick.
yeah. So there's that.
Yes.
And I don't disagree with that.
I don't disagree with that either. I would endorse that completely. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. You get to grade 3, they're talking about healthy relationships, whatever they mean by that,
Mm-hmm.
visible, invisible differences, including things like family structures and showing
Mm-hmm.
respect for others, tolerance,
Yes.
right? Then you get into grade 4 and physical changes during puberty. That's the kind of stuff I was learning in grade 6. So it's a couple years earlier, I guess. Body hair, voice changes, emotional, social impacts. Grade 5, reproductive system basics, menstruation, reproduction. Grade 6,
So that's the same.
impacts.
That's the same as I think I had that in
Yeah.
1976,
Mhm.
77. We had, you know, they told us how about reproduction, and this
Yeah.
is going back what 1970. Actually, like, hard to believe. 1976 was 50 years ago, so not much has changed in 50 years. So that's the answer to that.
Yeah, in many ways it hasn't. Although I don't ever remember any. I should say I do remember that there was no real sex education before grade 6, and when, or maybe grade 5, and when it
Mhm.
did happen, I know that there were notes that went home, and
Mhm.
parents had the option of opting their child out of those particular classes. And
Okay,
I don't.
I
I
actually
don't
don't
think.
remember the notes. My entire class
Yeah.
was there was in the gymnasium. I can still remember because I found
Well,
it. It was kind of shocking to be honest.
yeah.
I
Well,
can
we
remember
took
this
it as,
day.
yeah, we took it as part of health education, like a general health education curriculum, and
Uh-huh.
there were modules for sex education, and I don't think any of the parents had their kids opt out in my classes. I think
I
every
don't think so either. I mean, there's about 30 of us, and every single one of the students was there.
Yeah.
My mom would have said something in all likelihood if I had to bring, because you brought note home, there was no email. If you get a note from the teacher, they put it in your hands and off you went with it, or they called your mom, right? In those years, I wasn't aware of any parental notification. It just happened, so it doesn't seem like really much has changed. Very minor changes. So it seems like the people that are talking about, kindergarten people learning about transgender people, that doesn't seem to really be a reality based on what we've read. That seems to occur later.
Rusty Wiener 1 is, oh God. This is like an actual name that they make up, right?
Oh my.
This guy, he, I assume it's a man. These people with fake identities in the chat all the time. The regular viewer, regular part of our community. That's cool. He's cool, kind of. I guess. I don't know. Anyway, that's his name. It's bigger, he says, than just the schools, spelled with a K. It's embedded, also misspelled, in everything from Saturday morning cartoons to cell phone commercials.
Okay. I love how he has this name. I forget, Rusty Miner something or other.
Rusty Wiener.
Stand by your opinions. My name is Roslyn Dechert. I live in Trenton, Ontario, and I'm a transgender woman. Don't be ashamed of yourself. Come out. I'm very traceable.
Me too. I'm easy to find. We are going to have a conversation about exactly that issue. Fake names in the chat, censorship, banning people. We're gonna reflect on all of that in a future episode. But yeah, I don't like it when people use fake names.
No, I don't either.
Especially if they are saying critical things or controversial things or attacking.
I believe in what I'm saying. I just give you my name, essentially my address. I believe in what I'm saying. I don't have to hide from you.
Yeah.
I'm here to help people, honestly, everybody. And it doesn't matter if you're against me, that's okay. Be against me, let me know, let's talk. Dialogue will be constructive for us both, even if we agree to disagree. I don't have to hide from you.
And that is what we're trying to do here, is have a dialogue, a conversation. And I'm very grateful to you to have the courage to come here and have this conversation with us tonight. I think it is helpful. It's extremely helpful. We need to build these bridges, right?
Yes.
Even though Donald Trump doesn't want them to open, right? We need to build them anyway, and then insist that they open so that we can learn to get along better. And that's what this is all about, this conversation, which brings me back to parental rights, or this concept of parental rights. I'm going to ask the people in the chat to comment on this. What are your opinions on parental rights? I'm just going to ask the question broadly, and I'll start with you, Roslyn.
All right. Well, I think parents, should, and my parents did this in their own capacity growing up, and I think it helped me. I think parents need to expose their children to how the world works. And, my granddad told me a lot about money, how money works. My father told me a lot about ethics. My mom explained to me about dynamics and relationships with people. And, I think I got several different opinions from different family members, and I was able to take that information and, become the person that I am. So I think parents need to share information with their children so they can make advised decisions as adults that are productive, rather than, ill-advised decisions, which might not be so productive.
Someone is saying that I didn't punch the right words into Grok, that I shouldn't have said sex education. I should have said Soji 1, 2, 3, but we did already. That was the first question. So you got to keep up, we move fast around here, but there is a rewind button. So you can always go back and watch the archived version. And I'm just going to look in the chat and see if anybody's saying anything about parental rights. So CBC Brown says, if we lose speech, we're done. That's true. And
absolutely, I agree.
That's what we're doing here, man.
We need open, free speech, and not everyone's going to agree with me, and that's okay.
Yeah. And Dee says, exactly as I love dialogue. That's why I invited you for a coffee. We are neighbors. I don't know if that's directed at you, but I'm sure that you would probably take Dees 123 up on that if you were
I'd love to have a
nearby.
coffee with them. Yes.
And Jubilee says, discipline at home with a thumbs up. And
Mm-hmm.
Cindy says, I feel parents should always be informed. I was raised in a sheltered home.
Mm-hmm.
I know my parents meant well, though.
Yeah.
And then I too want to be 51 because I long to be Americani. And that he says, at what age, Roslyn, did you never just play games and learn to read and write in school? I don't know what that means. We'll move
I
on.
don't know what that means either. I
Rust,
went to school in the early 70s, so
see, and Rusty Wiener one, he obviously did not get sex ed because in school because he didn't know how to take care of his private parts, and now they're ready to just turn to dust and fall off because they're so rusty.
oh my
Um,
goodness.
he says it's not the school or government's place to discuss gender with kids. It's ideology, not science. Oh, we normally do a movie on Friday nights. So Serge 2926 says the movie tonight should be Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that movie. Yeah, it's one of many movies. It would have just been nice if Mrs. Doubtfire, instead of being a housekeeper, was someone who was a test pilot or a doctor, or a real estate investor. And that's some of the careers that the transgender people I know do. It's
Mhm.
unfortunate that Mrs. Doubtfire was just the housekeeper, because there's a lot of transgender people doing incredible. I mean, speaking of AI, I have a very close friend that is actually does research on artificial intelligent systems and has written about 50 or 60 published papers on AI. So let's talk about those trans people, not the housekeepers or the ones that are in prison. Let's talk about the ones who win. We're a very heterogeneous population. We do many, many things, have many careers, many beliefs.
Yeah. DJ Bear says, yes, parents should be informed on what their children are being taught and even participate.
Sounds reasonable.
And Mr. America, Captain America,
Oh my.
want to be 51, says parental rights pertain to each parent's children, not one size fits all. And I'm going to give you a completely different take on this at the end, folks, because I think it's not any of these things technically. Cindy says coffee time, Roslyn, and
Right on.
Jubilee is making reference to Rusty Wiener's private parts now, and she's laughing. And DJ Bear says, mind you, I hate to say this, I have seen some that should not have kids or at least be monitored. I see some bad things. That's going to tie into what I'm going to say at the end.
Mhm.
And now they're talking about Mrs. Doubtfire again.
Oh, okay. Well, it's amazing how she attracted so much attention, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And Linda, CBC Brown, also why I have been sending questions to Rick so you have a voice. Right. Linda does that as part of the moderation. Will send me things that people are saying. Rusty Wiener, one, says Ms. Doubtfire,
Uh-huh.
again misspelled. Rusty Wiener, you got to learn your spelling, dude, or just type slower because it might be your keyboard. Was a super depressing story. Was it? I don't remember. How did Mrs. Doubtfire end? He was having a bad time with his wife, as I recall.
I think I remember it ended that they I haven't watched it in years, but I think they just went on to continue to be Mrs. Doubtfire, and that made them happy. I think that was the end of the story.
Yeah, or something like that.
Mhm.
That was Robin Williams, and
Yeah.
there's a sad story.
Mhm.
I often look at comedians, and as much as they make us laugh, I always see so much pain in their eyes.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. I think they use the humor as a shield. And I think they become that way in school when they're younger, often because they are often the victims of bullying. And it's the humor that they use to protect themselves and others.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds, yes.
yeah. And and then in the end, with what happened to Robin Williams, I think it highlights the the pain that they hide. And yet always, even in his eyes, I always saw pain, and it makes me so sad.
It's that, but he, I know, he shared a lot of great movies with the world,
Yeah.
he truly had so much to share, and we benefited so much from knowing Robin through the movies.
Yes. And I think that Mrs. Doubtfire was one of those films, one of those pieces of pop culture that
Hmm.
helped facilitate and promote more tolerance in
I
our
think so.
society.
Yeah, yeah, it goes, quite a ways back in modern history, and yeah, I think it was conducive to acceptance. Yes,
I think that we were further ahead back then in many ways, and at those times. When did Mrs. Doubtfire come out? That would have been in the 80s.
I think it was the '80s or the '90s. Yeah.
80s, yeah,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
late 80s.
Hmm.
I think we were making real progress at that time.
We were
Um,
making progress. Yes.
yeah, and now we're backsliding.
In some regards, yes, we
Yeah,
are backsliding. I'd say the last 4 or 5 years.
and in the past week, because of the
Mm-hmm.
backlash, the response, the anger, and the sorrow that is coming from Tumbler Ridge.
I think in all likelihood, people who didn't inherently dislike transgender people for the simple fact that we were transgender, anyone reasonable will realize this is an individual, whether they were, Chinese, transgender, black, or gay, that simply made a very bad, destructive decision. And, it has really
Mm.
nothing to do with them being black, Chinese, Canadian, American, gay, or transgender. It's an individual who made a bad decision, period. A tragic, unfortunate, bad decision. And that's what it is.
Yeah, I can't help but think that Jesse Strang or Van Rootselaar,
Mhm.
that they were subjected to psychological trauma, that they were subjected to abuse at school,
We we
bullying.
don't we don't
I
know
don't
because
know, but
with what I've read, nothing's come out yet. So we're
yeah,
making that assumption. And
yes,
even if they were, because I've been
yes,
subject to all sorts of absolute horrible nonsense,
yeah,
um, based on, we don't have to make decisions based on
right,
environmental factors. We make decisions because we choose to be powerful individuals and have power of decision.
yeah. Nevertheless, we're dealing with a kid. I mean, 18, I guess, right? So adult, whatever, still a kid, and has been going through whatever he's been going through in a family with without a dad, a, a family that is certainly not what some people would say is traditional. I don't know what was going on in that person's life.
Mhm.
Probably never really will,
I
because
I imagine they will investigate and interview people that were close to that individual. And hopefully, we all have some more answers and can try to justify something that's unjustifiable, and perhaps I don't think we could ever justify that kind of action. I think it would be a different case if, this was a one-on-one issue and a fight ensued. And, unfortunately, someone got very badly hurt. That's one thing. But to go into they weren't in that school for 4 years. So to go to a school that you haven't attended for 4 years and start randomly killing a bunch of individuals, I don't think we can ever justify it. It's frankly an
no.
act of evil. I will be judgmental here. That's an act of evil. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat. That individual chose an act of evil. It's horrible.
But if we're going to
Uh,
prevent these things from happening again, we have to find ways to drill down into these things and try to figure some of these things out. If it was something because of drugs that this person was taking, that would
Mhm.
be an issue, right? If it's, we need to know if we can, and I don't know if we can,
The
but
only answer I have is actually he's one of the founders of modern psychology, Viktor Frankl. And Frankl made a statement that, and he wrote this book. It was quite a while ago now. That society, he says, over the last decades, has become more and more of an existential, or lived in more and more of an existential void. And that was a statement by Viktor Frankl. He's one of the, there was Freud, Adler, and Frankl. He's one of the three founders of modern psychology, and he made that statement, and perhaps that can help us find an answer. I don't know, but it was a very interesting notation that
what
Viktor
does he
Frankl
mean
made.
by an existential void?
Um, I think it means a lot of things, but people perhaps have less empathy now. You know.
Let's ask Grok.
Um,
Let's ask Grok.
Okay, let's ask Grok. There we go. Existential void. How do you spell
And
existential? I'm not sure.
I can spell it. Okay, so this was hey, Mr. Grok. Boy, do I have a question for you. There is a dude from times recent past by the name, what was this guy's name? Franco, right?
Yeah, if you use his last name, Franco should do it.
And he's Franko, I guess.
Franco. I think Frankel, perhaps.
Kel. Okay. He was a psychologist or something.
Yeah, psychiatrist. Yeah.
I think who studied what? Human sexuality?
I think his studies were categorical. I mean, I read one of his books.
Anthropology?
Man's Search for Meaning was one of his books where he wrote about this concept of existential void. And it seems to
Meaning,
be a lack of empathy in society. That's the best I can describe it.
sexuality, and
I don't know if it was so much about sexuality.
I'll get technical. I'll help Grok out here. Search for meaning. It's just man's search
Man's
for
Search
meaning,
for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
sexuality, and stuff. That'll help Grok. And stuff.
Let's see what
He
Grok comes up
used
with.
the phrase, what was it?
Existential void.
Yeah. People in modern times
Mhm.
are living in
An
an
existential void.
existential void.
Mhm.
What the hell did he mean by that? Grok, help. Frankl meant modern people face a deep sense of meaninglessness.
Okay.
So, yo, Maverick, he says, yo, Grok. First off, props for diving into some deep philosophical waters. Love it. You're spot on about the dude. It's Viktor Frankl, often misspelled as Frankel, no biggie, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who found logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy focused on finding meaning in life. His big hit book is Man's Search for Meaning, 1946, based on his concentration camp experiences, where he explores how humans cope with suffering by seeking purpose. Quick note. If you're mixing him up with Freud on sexuality stuff, that's understandable. Freud was all about that unconscious drive life, but Frankl shifted the focus to meaning and will. Now, on to your question. Frankl used the term existential vacuum. Okay, so it's existential vacuum, sometimes translated or paraphrased as existential void, same vibe.
Right.
To describe a modern crisis where people feel a profound emptiness or lack of meaning in their lives. And here's the breakdown straight from his ideas. Oh my God. Okay. So what he meant by it. In a nutshell, Frankl argued that in traditional societies, people's lives were guided by instincts like animals or traditions, values passed down through culture, religion, or community. But in the modern world, especially post-World War II, with rapid industrialization, secularization, and affluence, these old guides have faded. We're not starving for basic survival anymore, so our instincts aren't screaming at us. And traditions, they've weakened with individualism, technology, and societal changes, leaving a vacuum or void where meaning should be. I see. So the symptoms this void shows up as boredom, apathy, or a nagging sense of what's the point? That's like the Woody Allen movie. The universe? He goes to see the psychiatrist and he says, "Well, what's the point? The universe is expanding." Right? Yeah, people might chase distractions like workaholism, consumerism. Workaholism, I can relate. Power, pleasure, endless scrolling, addictions, or thrill seeking, but it doesn't fill the hole. Frankl called this a neugenic neurosis, from nous,
Interesting.
Greek for mind and spirit.
Interesting.
Basically, a soul sickness from lacking purpose, not just psychological issues like anxiety or depression, though it can lead to this. This is like a modern psychological challenge, I guess, where we feel empty because there's maybe so much affluence and um, life has become so easy because of all of because the quality of life has improved so much that
Yes.
we maybe are searching for sorrow, borrowing trouble, as it were. Thoughts?
Yeah. Because back to this, there's really I can't imagine any justification for the action that happened in British Columbia.
Mhm. Well, there is none
Yeah, there is
in the
none.
end.
And
Yeah.
people are trying to find justifications. And, one of the justifications is, well, all transgender people have mental health issues, so they must be bad, right? It's frivolous, but people, once again, just, as we talked about inequality and how people are searching for answers, people are trying to justify an unjustifiable act by a very evil individual.
Or find a quick and easy solution
Hmm.
by pointing a finger of blame at a group of people and saying it's all their fault.
Correct.
And that is not going to solve anything.
No, it's destructive for them because they should be putting their energy into more constructive activities, and it's destructive for my community.
It is.
Hopefully people can take this tragedy, on both sides.
Yeah.
And, transgender people, we need to, improve ourselves, become more productive, become more sure of ourselves. And the people that hate transgender people can use this as an opportunity to really objectively ask, why do we hate these people? Are they bad people? Or maybe they're not bad people. So maybe what can come out of this tragedy is that people can start asking themselves difficult questions, getting answers they don't like, which is a great thing because when you ask yourself a question and get an answer you don't like, it's conducive to positive change. And maybe that's what we can hope for.
Yes. I think it's not just destructive to your community, Rosin. I think it's destructive to our whole society
Yes,
because
absolutely.
because the people who are exploiting this for political purposes and are offering what they say is a solution
Hmm.
by pointing their finger at a group of people really
Hmm.
are not truly offering a solution
Yeah.
to this problem.
It's not going to help anybody. It doesn't help the trans people, and it certainly doesn't help the unfortunate people who are, disparaging our community, feeling that they're going to somehow prevent innocent children from dying in the future. It doesn't
Yeah.
help anybody, and so. Let's learn from this. That's all we can do. Let's take something that's unjustifiable and evil, and let's all learn. Let's all be better because of it.
If we can. Yeah. And that's why I say we need to try to understand what might have led to it so we can try to find ways to prevent it if we
Yes.
can. But I don't think, Rosalind, that tomorrow you are going to go and hurt anybody. I
No.
don't think that's going to happen. And so it's wrong to point anybody to point their finger at you or anybody in your community.
Tomorrow I'm getting up early in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm old, I'm sick, and I'm tired. And, I'm going to go to work. And, my little area here is going to be better off for the work that I do. And I'm going to put smiles on people's faces tomorrow morning. And that's what I'm going to do.
And that's not to say, and I need to say this too. It's not to say that the people in our chat and other people in our society who have concerns, they need to be heard too.
Absolutely, they do.
I think some of these people have very valid points,
Mhm.
and they should have a voice. That's why we're here too. That's why I'm
Yeah.
going through the chat, and I think that we can continue to work at all of these things, and then back to this issue of parental rights that I'm going to wrap up with. But I'll throw it back to you, Roslyn, first
Yes.
for a final thought tonight as we wrap up tonight.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you just repeat some of that? I just had a bit of a distraction.
Oh, sure. I was just going to say, I'm going to make a final comment on parental rights myself
Okay.
at the end. But before
Yes.
I do that, I'd like to just give you up an opportunity to kind of wrap things up. Give us as I often do at the end of the program, give you a chance for a final thought here to just sum things up and just share your final thoughts.
All right. Yes. Well, we need to all need to take responsibility for all actions, whether you're for transgender people or against us. And the individual who killed all these people in BC, needs to take responsibility for their actions. And hopefully, we can all learn from this, and let's not use our anger about this and our despair about this as something destructive. Let's be better people. Let's all be better than the shooter. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you for that. And I shared this overnight, and I probably should have said this last night when we were talking about parental rights. And I'm going to leave you with something to think about.
Mhm.
And this goes out to our entire Maverick family tonight. See, I don't think parents really have parental rights.
Okay.
I think, and this is coming from a dad,
Uh-huh.
I think we have parental obligations,
Okay.
responsibilities. Because the rights belong to the individual. The rights belong, in this case, to the children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my job as a dad to protect my kids.
Yes.
And to act as their guardian and advocate for them when they could not advocate for themselves because they were kids.
Yes.
Because children are not possessions.
Correct.
Children are on loan to parents.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, it's our privilege to be blessed with them during the time that we have them. And it's our obligation to take care of them, to nurture them, to love them, and protect them.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rick.
I hope that helps people tonight. And I will see everybody back. I'm not going to run a movie tonight. It's just, this has gone on long enough. Maybe we'll do a movie tomorrow. Depends. I might go out for Valentine's Day with my wife. You never know.
Nice.
That might happen too. So we'll see how it goes. But love all you guys. Love you too, Roslyn. Thank you for doing this
Thank
tonight.
you so much. It was a pleasure, Rick. Have a good night.
Awesome. And with that, I leave you, Mavericks, with this, and I will see you back here 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on the flip side.
Bye-bye, Rick.
I walk this ground, I breathe this air, felt the sun burn gold into my hair. Laugh too loud, cry too deep, carry love and buried grief. Every heartbeat wrote my name in water, fire, dust and flame. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The body falls, but the soul won't rust. Everything that is always was. Everything that was always will be. I am not gone, I am just moving on. Scattered like seeds on an endless sea. I'm still me in God's matrix of infinity. There is nothing, nothing but possibilities. Watch me break, watch me spill across the rivers, over the hills. Carbon and water, light and heat. A billion new hearts will feel my beat. The tree will wear my skin as bark. The wind will sing my laugh in the dark. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I'm not ending, darling, I'm turning into us. Everything that is always was. Everything that was always will be. I am not gone, I am just moving on. Reborn in the roots of a cedar tree. I'm still me in God's matrix of infinity. There is nothing, nothing but possibilities. Was I ever here? Was any of this real? Did the light ever land on my face for real? Were these hands ever mine? This heart ever true? Then I remember the weight of love in you. The taste of salt from a tear I cried. The way the morning found me alive. I felt, I heard, I hoped, I tried. I think I was, and I will be again. What will I become? What will I be? Maybe rain that kisses the sea. Maybe a child's very first cry. Maybe the blue in somebody's sky. Something new, but always me. Because truth, because God has set me free. Everything that is always was. Everything that was always will be. I am not gone, I am just moving on. My thoughts still ripple, my love still runs through veins of strangers, through setting suns. I'm still me. Echoes in your memory, in God's matrix of infinity. There is nothing, nothing but possibilities. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I'm not leaving, I'm becoming us.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.